I think that was one of my worst moments as a Manchester United supporter, let alone
in life. I thought you were going to say in life.
Yeah.
It was the first time ever, for me personally, right? I legitly, seriously went, I need to have a look at the table. Relegation.
Well, Mbeumo and Semenyo, the two players that I've been told have met Ruben Amorim personally. In fact, we got to Thursday, which was the deadline that I was given. I think he'll probably stay.
I think it's going to be a tell in the next 2 or 3 months where Man Utd are going to go forward in the next couple of years.
A rebuild is massively needed. You have to look at some of these players that can be sacrificed.
2 days after the final, an absolute disaster class. All we're doing is speaking about Garnacho.
We've obviously lost 1-0 to Essien All-Stars as well, a team that's just been put together, and the last time they played was in 2014.
It's just prolonging this pain.
Completely demoralised us again.
I think it's a shambles, to be honest. I paid no attention to the match yesterday, didn't even look at the lineup. I've got no interest.
There's obviously a lot of Man United fans following along, but there's also a lot of rival fans never wanting me to cut my hair again.
Hello and welcome to Inside Devils talkSPORT show, keeping you up to date with everything coming out of Old Trafford. But before we start today's episode, we'd like to pass on our thoughts to those affected by Monday's awful incident at the Liverpool Trophy Parade. Our best wishes go out to the club and the city of Liverpool at this very, very difficult time. Right, now, the season is finally over, and with that, we've got to discuss it. We really, really do have to discuss it. We're going to have to do a bit of a look back at the campaign that saw us finish in an unforgivable 15th in the Premier League, not to mention losing to Tottenham in the final in Bilbao. Right, joining me, of course, is Alex Crook, Angelina Kelly and Ryan Scott-Douglas. Later on, we're going to be looking at what transfer activity we should expect from Ruben Amorim's first summer window. But for now, let's get stuck into, hopefully, a brief season review. We'll kick off with everyone's best and worst moments, and yours at home as well. Crookie, let's start with you, actually. We caught up in the mix zone after the game. We were very animated, I think is the right word. You were very animated. Do I just stop there and say that was probably your worst moment of the season, or does anything surpass that?
I think that was one of my worst moments as a Manchester United supporter, let alone
in life.
I thought you were going to say in life. Yeah.
Obviously, there's been disappointments along the way. You know, I go back to that final day of the season when we couldn't beat West Ham and Blackburn pipped us to the title. The Aguero moment was absolutely horrendous, having thought we won the league and then lost it. But it's all relative, isn't it? I just think I came away from Bilbao, as probably came across in that debrief, at a really low ebb and genuinely concerned about the future of the football club. So that has to be the worst moment. Best moment, crikey, they're thin on the ground.
Does that even exist?
I was at the Etihad, the Derby win, the Ahmad goal. That was pretty special, but it's tinged a little bit with the fact that Manchester City haven't been their best this season. Liverpool away, and that draw at Anfield, I think, was probably the one game where I thought, right, this is Amorim ball, and this is all coming together. Unfortunately, that proved to be yet another false dawn. So, yeah, they're probably the two highs. Arsenal in the FA Cup and that penalty shootout win that nobody expected. Apart from that, I'm struggling.
Crookie struggling, guys. Ryan, for you, I know you're Mr. Positive.
Yeah.
But we all have shared how rubbish it's been this year, so there aren't too many positives. But your best and worst.
Oh, God. There's so many for worst. Like, it's like asking, where to pinpoint the sea's wet. Do you know what I mean? It's just this. It was so much bad. I'd say the worst was the Europa League final, because for weeks and weeks, months even, we had that in our sights as, this is the competition we have to prioritise. We get there and we just don't turn up. I mean, Spurs do nothing for 90 minutes and win it, which that is a damning insight into us. There's so many bad moments. There's so many. I can't even go over it. The best moment for me was probably Lyon, the comeback. I think that euphoric high that created was just nice.
Short-lived, but it was really nice.
Yeah. In a season that was just riddled with negativity, I think that was a nice euphoric high. However, I don't doubt that paved over the cracks a little bit, because the fact remains we were 2-0 up and we nearly threw that away.
Yeah.
So it did pave over the cracks. But you know what? Fine. In isolation, that comeback was good. So I'm going to say the Lyon game. And you know what? The final day of the Premier League season is one of the best I think I've seen us play. against Aston Villa, that 2-0 win. I do think that is a positive because Villa were playing for something. So that's me being as positive
You're
as I
being
can
really
be.
nice.
Yeah.
Because the pressure was off and they decided to play.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I like where you're
know
going
what
because we
I'm
do need some positivity. But we got to go to Ange now.
Oh dear, here we
So-
go. Here we go.
Best and worst moments, Ange?
I would probably say, I think the Arsenal game stood out for me, but I think the Lyon game, just because it reminded you of kind of like the old days of something going to extra time and what's going to happen. You had goals, you had a sending off, you had a lot of goals.
Yeah.
And it being at home, like we didn't have a lot of great games at home this season. So I think to walk out of that on such a high will have been, obviously I wasn't at the game, but for people to walk away from that feeling like, oh my God, like...
It was euphoric.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was experiencing.
Yeah, and I think for me, because I remember watching that game, I'd been up super early, like a 5 a.m. start or something, and I was so delirious by the end of it, and I was like, this can't go to penalties. I'm literally like, I'm hanging on for dear life here. Worst moment, I think there's a lot, but I'm actually going to go a little bit left field now, and I would say Manchester United worst moment, just Ineos and Sir Jim in general.
As in, when they said that it's been ratified and we are the owners?
As in, I think...
When they sacked Dan Ashworth or when he done an interview saying...
There's so many different ones. I think the new stadium announcement, that was not great. That was a bit of a bad moment, looking at that circus tent and them trying to make out like they're creating loads of jobs for people when really they're just going to be 0 hours contracts. They're going to create loads of housing. There's no actual... But it's probably going to be buy-to-let, let's be honest. You know, you look at what they're saying about, there's no actual explanation about Old Trafford, what they're going to do. Sir Jim Ratcliffe's interview where he's, kind of, praising the Glazers almost, that really, really stung. Sir Jim Ratcliffe in general.
Stuff, yeah.
Sir Jim Ratcliffe in general, again, not going to the Women's FA Cup final, extremely disappointing. So I think just the way that I came into this season as their first full season and really expecting something, ticket prices, I could go on and on, there's a massive list.
Fair.
The rats in the stadium, the redundancies, for a lot of people this season, it's been really tough. So I think I had really high expectations that we were going to see some real positivity, and the PR has been horrendous. And it's just been so disappointing from him and his company, what we thought we were going to get versus what we've actually got. So that, for me, there's a lot of games I could have picked from, but just Man United overall, that's been my worst moment, just seeing that unfold.
We'll get back to Crookie in just a second. For me, just very quickly, look, I was out there in Bilbao, as was Crookie. I had to stay another 2 days after the final.
Oh, that was painful, that wasn't it? That wasn't fair.
It wasn't fair.
We should have flown a talkSPORT plane over for you.
100%. Or that bus, you should have driven it.
Yeah, we should have.
That's what you should have done.
We could have
Put
done
it on
like
the ferry
an easy getaway then.
Rescue mission.
100%. So at least we get back, or I'm all going far away from Bilbao
Even
as
just
possible.
a helicopter to get you away from Bilbao.
Just something.
Something we need to think about.
But I didn't get it. So overall, it is that. Because, that was the one thing where I was like, there's no way we're going to lose to Spurs. I don't care how bad we've been.
Yeah.
So that sort of sinking feeling of being at rock bottom, that kicked in. But actually, I'm going to go a little bit left field. Mine's a bit personal. There was just before we played Ipswich Town at home, it was the first time ever, for me personally, right? I legitly, seriously went, I need to have a look at the table. Relegation.
Oh.
As a United fan, I am honestly, this isn't for banter or jokes or to, sensationalise how bad. No, I need to see what happens if we don't beat Ipswich Town in this game. Because it was close at the time. And I remember that feeling of, oh my God, Flex, I'm looking at I'm checking Wolves. And also when we lost to West Ham, it was like a new low because I was like, okay, apart from the relegated teams, West Ham are the worst.
Yeah.
West Ham are the worst. You can't buy a win, Graham Potter, this, that and the other. And when they beat us 2-0, it was another sinking feeling. So, yeah, those are my worst moments. And best, it's between obviously Lyon, I was there, but when I look back, when I'm calm, away from the euphoria, we should never have been in that position.
Yeah, no.
But being there was amazing. But I'd probably say the City game, Ahmad chipping it over the keeper's head and then, finishing.
Phenomenal goal as well.
A great goal.
Yeah.
Crookie, just for a few individuals, player-wise, it's been a horrendous season, awful. Has there been any positives from an individual basis for you, like from any players, etc.?
Just you guys talking about Leon there. I commentated that game, right? And I was very happy with the commentary. That should have been a career highlight for me, let alone a highlight of the season. But because they stunk the place out in the final, I can't even put it in as a highlight. Honestly, you've ruined my moment, boys. What are they doing?
That's true. That's really sad.
And it was very good commentary.
It was.
It was.
Give you your props.
It was
very good.
It was. Just tell your kids.
Doesn't matter now, does it? Individuals. Wow, that is a tough question. I mean, Bruno Fernandes. Listen, his numbers, the fact he's been the driving force. I think Ahmad, when he's been fit, looks like he can be something really special. I mean, encouraged by what we've seen from Lenny Yoro, but again, there are doubts about his fitness, but that looks like one sign that Ineos have got right. Outside of that, I think you're struggling, aren't you? I mean, Haradonna at times. But,
yeah, Haradinho.
I mean, he's probably been the most unlikely cult hero of the season when you look at where he was at the start of the campaign. But yeah, very few players have really covered themselves in any great glory. That there are a handful that if you were Ineos now and you had a blank canvas, I think I would struggle to name 5 players that I could say, right, definitely keep him. He's got a big future at the football club. And I think I've just named the ones that probably have.
Biggest disappointment, Crookie, player-wise?
Oh, you've got a lot to pick from.
Yeah.
This is going to be controversial for our man Ryan. I think Garnacho. Second half of the season, post Ten Hag. His numbers are poor. He's gobbing off in the media. His brother's going to social media.
Yes, Crook.
Top 3 Premier League scorers for United.
Ruben Amorim for calling him
come
out.
on.
Crookie,
I don't blame him for calling him out.
Top 3 Premier League scorer for United.
Come on.
It's been a bad season. He's had to play loads of games. I'm just putting different sides. In fact, maybe I should hand over to Ryan. Do you want to come in on that?
It's not been the best season for Garnacho. I'm not gonna sit here and say Garnacho's been phenomenal. I do feel like the hate's getting a bit forced now, though. Like you say, he scored more goals than last season. You know, he's not had a bad season. We've been over-reliant on a youngster, you know, and he's clearly burnt out. I think he's definitely not been the most disappointing. You can talk about maybe the way he was outspoken in the media, sure, okay. So there's moments in isolation, but in terms of on the pitch, he's been the brightest spark at points. He was the best player in that Europa League final, and he only played 20 minutes of it. I don't understand. I feel like he's being scapegoated a bit, which, look, that happens sometimes. But there's far more disappointing players than Alejandro Garnacho. That for me does. I'm not having that, but you know me. I'm in Garner's corner.
Crookie?
I just think, yes, he had a good first half of the season. And you might blame Ruben Amorim, you might say it's the coaching, you might say it's the system. But his numbers in the second half of the season are poor. And, you know, football is so data-driven now. Clubs will be looking at that and thinking, wow, do we really want to pay 50, 60 million quid for this guy? Has he got the end products? And I'm talking about, when you say disappointing, I'm talking about players who didn't fulfill their potential. There's a good player in there for Garnacho.
Right.
But I think a bit like Marcus Rashford, he's got the wrong people around him. I don't think it's a good idea when you're a young player to have a family member represent you as your agent, because they're only going to tell you what you want to hear. You know, his agent would have told him on the back of that Europa League final, you're the best player here, you should have been playing. And that's obviously why he was so aggressive in the mix zone. That's obviously why his brother took to social media as well. I mean, if you're talking about biggest flop, it's going to be Rasmus Højlund, isn't it? I mean, you've got a striker there who looks like he's
way
never
worse.
scored again.
That's where I would have went. If I'm talking about biggest disappointment, he'd be top of my list. Then I'll be at Andre Onana's neck. Like,
yeah.
do you know what? As much as there's a lot that's gone on with Garnacho, and we'll talk about it in a little bit more depth.
Okay.
For me, if you ask me at the top of the list, that wouldn't have been my top of the list. It wouldn't, because I just see, like, in an awful team, after Bruno Fernandes, and Ahmad obviously was out for a while, it's Garnacho who's doing things. Now, it wasn't great. He frustrated. He made wrong decisions, etc., etc. But with what Rasmus Højlund's just thrown up this year, he's got to go. With what Andre Onana's continued to do from last year, he's got to go. So I probably would have went with those players more. For you, Ange, where are you on what's happening? Worst player this season? I know we don't want to give out awards, but
I'd say the biggest kind of positive player, I would go with Ahmad. I think, giving us those away goals at City and Liverpool gave us some great moments. This was a bit of a do-or-die season for him, or sink-or-swim season for him, because it was very much like he was on the fringes, he'd had loans. It was like this season he really needs to step up, and he did step up. And I think you look at the future of Man United, and he is one of those players that stands out. I think big shout out for Bruno Fernandes. He started the season terribly, but to turn things round. Aiden Heaven, Lenny Yoro.
He's been a positive.
I think Lenny Yoro, I read a quote in The Guardian, and it said, it was praising him, and it said, of course, it is impossible to rule out the possibility Man United ruin him. But for now, he's every bit as good as everyone said he was.
Well, that's fair.
It really resonated with me. Yeah, it really made me chuckle. So yeah, I think regarding like the biggest disappointing player of the season, I think you do look to somebody like Luke Shaw. It's 4.5 seasons now of injury. It's just frustrating. Anthony talks, and I know that Anthony has said things about his struggles, and I genuinely do feel for him going through a tough time, but he kind of talked the talk of, you're going to see a different side to me, and we never really saw that. But I think for me, the biggest disappointment is Marcus Rashford, and I know that I've got. Do you remember him? He still plays for us. Yeah, I think he's still a Man United player technically, but I know that we've been angry, we've been frustrated. I know that I've gone in on him before, and I'm not taking it back, but I think now I look at it with a bit more melancholy, and I'm a little bit, it's just disappointing. Nobody wanted it to end this way. This was, our local homegrown talent who has done some amazing things on and off the pitch. And I just think for it to end this way really sour, it really makes me sad. And I'm not saying it's a disappointment. He's not been great on the pitch, but I just think the whole thing in general has just been really disappointing. And I know I joke about, why does he think he's getting a move to Barcelona or whatever, but I genuinely do.
Might that's the thing. He's going to have the last laugh.
I know, he literally will. But I genuinely hope that whatever he's looking for, like if like when you break up with an ex, but you genuinely do wish them the best, like it's kind of like that situation. It's just sad. The whole thing is just sad. It wasn't supposed to end like this. Yeah. So I think that it has been disappointing.
And just lastly on Garnacho, because we're going to talk about, some more sort of situations and issues about the postseason now and sort of looking at what happened. Is he being unfairly treated here? I'm not going to ask Ryan that. I'll get because Ryan has basically made his case already. Is it unfair? Is it is he being unfairly pushed out here? Does he have a point that, hang on a minute, this team's been rubbish all year. I've played an awful lot of games. I played an awful lot of games last year to help this team. Mason Mount's been injured for 2 years. 2 years. He started ahead of me. Had a stinker, by the way. Ahmad has been injured for most of the season. I've been asked to carry that burden. And I've done it to the best I could in an awful ship. And I was overlooked for the final, so I'm really frustrated about that.
I understand him being frustrated, but you have to look within in those moments maybe and think, well, have I given enough in this season? He hasn't. As much as he has done a lot of positive things, and I do get where Ryan's coming from, but I feel like it's, for me, I get the frustration. I get why he might be a little bit miffed, but do not take that to the media. That is my problem. And we've talked about it. Me and Ryan have had a debate about it. I stick to my stance. I don't think that I agree with Crookie. I think the whole family influence, he knows what his family's posting. He could have come out and said, I just want to say, listen, my family say what they want. I'm not condoning it. I just think, again, like I said, it's
Do you think
the
he should be
mafia.
sold?
I think he should be sold, just because you have to be open sometimes to cutting the cord. And the bottom line is, Ruben Amorim has said that he wants him out. A rebuild is massively needed. No Champions League football. You are not going to get money for a Luke Shaw, for a Rasmus Højlund. So you have to look at some of these players that can be sacrificed. And, he does have some values, and he has to be on the chopping block, unfortunately.
Me and Ange had a back and forth about this last week, which I think the vast majority of the Man United fan base are going to side with Ange on Garnacho and his post-match comments, which, look, that's fine. And whether you're Garnacho in or Garnacho out, I think maybe it's ran its course now. I think we're seeing that. However, there's a few things here about this Garnacho post-match interview, right? First of all, it's smoke and mirrors, in my opinion. 2 days after the final, an absolute disaster class. All we're doing is speaking about Garnacho because there's been a leak to a really reputable source, right, that he's been told to get gone. There's been a few nuggets like that this season. We talk about the stadium announcement. We talk about that interview, that sit-down interview with Jim Ratcliffe, just to distract. And I do feel for Garnacho a little bit because I think that post-match interview is blown way out of proportion. It's just gone, think about, right, I'm not going to put his age into it, okay? And it's not just because it's Garnacho, but anyone would be frustrated in that scenario, having a microphone put right in front of his face. And how do you feel? Well, I feel frustrated because our season's been rubbish and I only got 20 minutes and I feel like I deserve more. That's basically what he says. We ask for passion, we ask for character, we ask for bite, and we're muzzling him now. We're saying, no, you can't say that. For me, it's been blown far out of proportion.
Well, it's never going to come across well, though.
Of course not.
But it's the passion.
Manager.
Yeah, I know
and
that.
It's when you mirror it with the other interviews that people gave, maybe people that are older, not necessarily older, maybe people that are just better media trained, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe people where English is their first language, and I will definitely pull that into play because, I speak Spanish as a second language, and I can't imagine having a mic shoved in front of me and having to say
But what about
something.
people that say that this is sort of a repeated offence in terms of having some issues? Now, yes, he's young, so we thought that maybe these would evaporate over time, and they haven't, and there's sort of been some mishaps along the way.
Everyone else was humble in those interviews, I felt. Everyone else kind of took a bit... Yeah, he takes accountability for the team. He doesn't take accountability for himself. And I said it before, it's all about him. I. Everybody else is saying, we're sorry to the fans, this isn't good. And I think, had he have done that as well, then I can understand it. But to walk round like you've been the saviour of the club and I deserved better...
You think he puts himself on too high a pedestal?
Yeah, I deserved better. You know what? The fans deserve better. The people that have been made redundant deserve better. Fair enough, that's not his problem. But I just think to show a little bit of humility in those situations. There are other players that deserved better as well. It's not all going to be plain sailing. You're going to have these moments, and he's very naive if he thinks that this is the only time that he's not going to get game time when he wants it, and he needs to figure out how to respond to that in a better way because people ain't going to have it if every minute he don't get played.
So you're saying media training. So basically you're saying media training. So if that's the media training, why get him out? If it's as simple as media training,
I'm not saying it's as simple as media training. I'm just saying that he clearly isn't media trained.
One thing I'll say quickly about this.
Professional footballers should be, in my opinion.
Yeah, look, I do agree with that, and I agree he's not covered himself in glory. What I'm saying is he's been blown out of proportion. Also, right, this has been saying a lot, and you've just mentioned it there, right? They talk about the team. Let me tell you something. Ban post-match conferences. Just ban them. There's absolutely no point.
Because they can't win.
No, because every single week we're going to hear the same thing. What we should do, right, is at the start of the season, get Bruno Fernandes, get the captain of every club to go, it wasn't good enough. We need to take a look at ourselves. We'll be back next week. Sorry to the fans. Because that's all you want to hear when we lose.
Well, Luke Shaw did it, didn't he?
Yeah, that's it. You're going to hear that from every single player. What is the point in a post-match conference? The second someone goes, well, I tell you what, we've had a really bad season. I'm feeling awful about it. I only got to play 20 minutes. I feel like I deserve more game time. It's getting scrutinised.
That's not going to help.
Okay, I'm going to give you two a timeout. I'm going to give look what's happened here, guys. Look what's happened. We have to have a timeout because I'm going to
Civil war.
over to Crookie. Crookie, listen, just very quickly from yourself, just finish off on the last bit of this Garnacho thing in terms of, with all of that being said, do you just think he's got to go? Or actually, Dad sorted the argument out. Or has Ryan, got a bit more of a point? And secondly, Crookie, if we'd have won that Europa League as well, would that have just papered over the cracks and masked how poor we really are? There's a sort of argument from some fans that I spoke to in Bilbao that said, you know what, Flex, at least we've just ripped the plaster off. The wound's open. The only way now is forward to start stitching it up and realising how bad we actually are.
Yeah, I can understand that argument. Obviously, the counter-argument is that there's no Champions League football and the money that would have come with that to help with the rebuild. But it does mean that Ruben Amorim can afford to be ruthless this summer because it's going to be one game a week, a lot of time on the training pitch. I think he'll work with quite a young squad. I think you'll see a lot of the younger players promoted into the first team. Just in terms of Garnacho, first and foremost, he wasn't speaking in his second language. That interview was in Spanish, was it not?
It was. Right, okay. You know what? I'll take that back.
Don't tell Ange that. Why did you tell Ange that?
Right, I ain't having it even more. Thank you very much.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was. I knew that. I just didn't say anything.
So you can't blame a language barrier.
No.
And listen, you know, when we spoke in the immediate aftermath of the game, I shared his frustrations. I told you then that Ineos were going to try and sell him. I said they would also try and sell Kobe Manu. We'll see what happens there. But then I spoke to Troy Deeney on our show on Friday on talkSPORT, and he said, you know what, he's selfish, he's entitled, and that will be the view of his teammates. And I took a step back and thought, okay, well, if that's what is going to be thought inside the dressing room, then Ruben Amorim is going to have to stamp his authority, because if he lets Garnacho get away with this, then it undermines him with the rest of the players. And we've been there before in the recent past. I think that's why Marcus Rashford has found himself persona non grata. And I think in order to change the culture, you need to be seen to be authoritative. And I think the only way he can do that is, as he has done, by saying to Garnacho in front of his teammates, well, you better pray that a club comes in for you.
Right, it's almost time to do our first transfer roundup for the postseason. But before we do, Angelina's caught up with former United midfielder Paul Ince in association with Bet365 to hear his views on what on earth is going on at Old Trafford.
Bruno Fernandes.
Yes.
Will he stay? Will he go? That would be a massive loss for the club if he was to move on.
Well, it's a difficult one. You know, I mean, as you said, if the big clubs come calling, it's hard for him not to go. And I suppose with Bruno, looking at what he's seen over the last, how many years? He's been there 6-7 years.
You can forgive him if he's a bit fed up.
Yeah, you can. You can honestly. I mean, he's seen managers come and go. He's seen things happen at the club, and he looks a bit frustrated. He has done for the last couple of years, if you ask me. You know, every time you see him, he's whinging or moaning and rolling. It looks very frustrating to me at the moment. Even though he's been the Man Utd's best player this season by far, you know, he can see what's going on. So I think it's a question, would you blame him if he left? Unless Amorim's prepared to sit him down and say, listen, this is what we're planning to do next season. This is who we're looking to bring in. This is what we're looking to try and do. But when you look at where they finished in the league, and you look at the performance in the Europa League final, you know, you won't blame him if he had kind of reservations about staying, you know, and but that's something that him and the club have to talk about. He want to know what the future looks like for Manchester United. But as I said, if any of those big clubs come calling, he'd be thinking about, I hope he stays for Man United fans' sakes.
Ruben Amorim, you were coached at Manchester United by arguably the world's greatest in Sir Alex Ferguson. From what you see from Ruben Amorim, the way that he's very honest with the fans, he will apologise. He reportedly has said things to people like Alejandro Garnacho, like, you need to find a new club. You know, he said, it's reported that he didn't want Rashford and he made that clear. Do you like the way that he's going about things as someone who understands Manchester United and what that club represents?
That's a tricky question. I don't know how to answer that one. Because I listen, I
because as a fan, I like that he's honest.
I think, listen, I think, yes, you can be honest with the fans, and you know, sometimes you can be too honest with fans. And I don't want to be in a situation where you have to tell the fans everything that's going on. You know, I think some things need to be kept. I mean, I don't think Sir Alex Ferguson would have said, I don't want Rashford or Garnacho can go and find another. Sir Alex Ferguson would have done that. You know, he would have kept it internally, not externally. So I think sometimes when you're trying to be honest with the fans, I get that, but don't start saying what's going on internally in the football club. That stays between the club and the players, not the fans. The fans don't need to know that, in my honest opinion. But as the fans seem to like it, but his job is to produce winning football and winning teams. And I think, you know, Garnacho's played all season, and in terms of answer, he can find another club. You know, Shaw's not played all season, Mount's not played all season. They play in the Fire Cup final. You know, the guy they spent £50 million on, he doesn't even start in the cup final. You know, doesn't make changes to 70 plus minute. So there's questions out there that you've got to ask about him. So when you say to me he knows Manchester United, he doesn't know Manchester United. He knows the way he wants to play. Man United never played free at the back in the history of Man United. Chelsea have and other teams are into do, but we've never played free at the back. You know, so you've got to play a team, really, that is Ten Hag's team. All those players worked under Ten Hag. It was a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1. They never played free at the back. So you've got the same personnel trying to play a different system. Doesn't suit the players. Doesn't suit the players. You can see it. They don't like it. So sometimes you have to basically play the team that the players want to play in. If they want to play a 4-3-3, that's the way forward. But he seems adamant that he wants to play the way he wants to play, and that's the reason why Man United bought him, from Portugal. That's the big question next year. And he says, well, listen, when he gets his own players, well, PSR, you've got to be careful how many players you can get. You've got to sell players to bring players in. So I think it's going to be a tell in the next 2 or 3 months where Man United are going to go forward in the next couple of years.
Big words there from Paul Ince, former Manchester United midfielder and England midfielder, of course. Crookie, you were lucky enough to see Paul Ince play for Manchester United. Some stern words.
Age shaming him again.
It's showing the experience that Crookie has. This is why he's qualified to talk about these things.
Experience.
Exactly, experience and maturity. That's what you've got over us.
All maturity and experience.
All the buzzwords coming out.
Wow.
But he had some big words, didn't he, Crookie? Not least about our captain Bruno Fernandes, sort of suggesting that, listen, you couldn't blame him if he left the football club this summer.
Yeah, and unlike some of the current team, Paul Ince was a player who could back up his big words with big actions on the pitch. That's one of my favourite teams. That 93-94 double-winning side, and he was very much a part of it. I think he's right when he says the next 2 or 3 months are going to shape the next 2 or 3 years. I mean, we seem to say it every summer, but this does feel like the biggest transfer window of modern times in terms of getting those players out that Ruben Amorim doesn't want around the dressing room, stinking the place out, and in terms of getting the right calibre of player. I'm impressed by Matheus Cunha, because my understanding is that the conversations between him and the football club have never been about Champions League football. They weren't money driven. Obviously, he's going to get a big pay rise from what he's earning at Wolves, but actually he was more interested, I'm told, in the project and how Ruben Amorim could sell that to him. He wants to wear the number 10 shirt. He sees himself as a protagonist. I wrote about this in my notebook on the talkSPORT website this week. He feels like he's got the presence and the personality to follow in the footsteps of the likes of Ruud van Nistelrooy and Wayne Rooney. I'm all for that. I get the argument that Mason Mount got the number 7 shirt and that hasn't worked out particularly well. But I believe that Cunha has the type of personality to be a really inspiring figure. And we need a few more of them. Liam Delap, and then we're going to talk about transfers, looks like the lack of Champions League football is probably going to stop United from signing him. And I'm fascinated to see where they turn next in terms of centre forward. But because you can't offer Champions League football, because this is not the club that Paul Ince played for under Sir Alex Ferguson, the signings we're going to attract this summer have to really want to play for Manchester United. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely, Crookie. I see what Paul Ince is saying on many things, so check that out, guys, because Ange's done some really good work there. In terms of transfers, Crookie, look, you mentioned Matheus Cunha there. We pretty much know he's all but signed for Manchester United. We're just waiting for the finer details to be sorted out. There's been links with Bryan Mbeumo. I've seen you been talking about that. I think that'll be a fantastic signing. You say there that Liam Delap is now more likely to join Chelsea. Where does that leave Man United now in their hunt for a striker and another attacking player in the likes of Mbeumo? We've seen Eze mentioned as well. How do you understand the situation to be at the moment, Crookie?
Well, Mbeumo and Semenyo are the 2 players that I've been told have met Ruben Amorim personally. So they obviously feature highly on his list. Interesting because they're probably more wide players than number 10s, although certainly in the case of Mbeumo, he's got the capability to play there. He could play as a 9 as well. But in terms of a number 9, it is so difficult because all the top clubs, the so-called Big Six, seem to be shopping from the same list. The likes of Benjamin Šeško, Ekitike, Frankfurt put a massive asking price of 100 million euros on his head. Victor Gyökeres, obviously with a relationship with Amorim, but again, with no Champions League football, it looks difficult. Although there are suggestions floating around this morning that whoever joins Arsenal is going to have to play backup initially to Kai Havertz. So maybe that might swing with the Gyökeres chase in United's favour. I personally would go for someone like Victor Osimhen. I think he's does exactly what it says on the T-shirt. He's been there. He's scored goals at every level. But that's the big position, isn't it? If you say which one player do United have to go all in on this summer? Yes, the goalkeeper's rubbish, but the striker is so important because they're a team who create chances. I think 14 big chances missed over the course of the season, according to XG. I would suggest there's probably many more than that. So they need someone who's going to put the ball in the back of the net, and that isn't going to be Rasmus Højlund.
Is there any legs to the Gyökeres rumours? Because that's the name for me. I'm just thinking. I thought it died a death when we lost the final, but we're still flirting with the possibility. Is there any legs to that, Crookie? Is there any realm where that can happen? Give me some good news.
Lie to us.
It's still bubbling under, but
Okay.
the problem is, as I said, Arsenal are at the table. I think Liverpool have him on their list. Chelsea as well if the deal didn't happen, and all those clubs, even Tottenham if they wanted to sign him, well, they've not been mentioned to me. They can offer Champions League football, and the modern player wants to play in the Champions League, which again is why that defeat in Bilbao was so costly for United. I think they'd have got Liam Delap if they qualified for the Champions League.
It did look like it was swinging in United's favour. Crookie, there's supposedly a Thursday deadline at the time of recording anyway, for Bruno Fernandes to answer Al Hilal's contract offer of £700,000 a week plus bonuses. How true do you think that is? And how worried or how concerned is Bruno Fernandes right now while he's out there on the postseason tour, scrambling around? Is he going to stay? Is he going to go?
We're going to talk about that tour, by the way.
Yeah, we will do.
That is a shambles, sorry.
We will do.
Oh my gosh.
We'll do it after this. But for you, Crookie, is there anything in that? Are Al Hilal literally waiting for Bruno's green light and then they will come to Manchester United with a sizable bid? Or is this basically just going to go away because Bruno's going to ignore it?
Well, this is the way the Saudis do business. They like to give deadlines. They have a lot of targets on their list, and obviously Bruno features very prominently. Bearing in mind we're recording this on Thursday morning, and there's a risk I'm going to get egg on my face later in the day. I think the fact we've got to Thursday, which was the deadline that I was given earlier this week, and we've heard nothing from Bruno Fernandes or Manchester United to suggest they're going to entertain it, I think he'll probably stay. I wouldn't blame him for going. He's 30 years of age. He's been a really dedicated professional. He's done his job, arguably, when you look at his stats, even over the course of this season. But I think he's ambitious, and that's part of the reason he gets frustrated. And I'm not sure that a move to Saudi Arabia fulfills those ambitions. If this was Bayern Munich or Real Madrid who'd given him a deadline, I'd be much more concerned, I think.
Yeah. And lastly, Crookie, Marcus Rashford has returned to the football club, all but. He's had a short stint at Aston Villa to sort of stabilise himself, get back playing football again, get a smile on his face, raise his stocks, put him back in the shop window. There's reports, obviously, that he wants a dream move to Barcelona. There's obviously reports that his representatives have met with Deco as well. But also some reports saying that Man United might have to look at another loan for him, which clearly wouldn't help us in the situation we're in. How do you understand the latest on Marcus Rashford?
Well, I think the issue at the moment is that he's made it pretty clear to Manchester United that Barcelona is the club for him. That's why his advisors, again, members of his family, have been over in Spain this week speaking to Deco. And that puts Barcelona in quite a strong position to say, look, we're not going to pay the £40 million. We'll take him on loan. We'll pay the bulk of his wages, much like Aston Villa did. But really, that just kicks the can down the road. And I'm intrigued by the narrative around Marcus Rashford and Aston Villa, because a lot of newspaper journalists were writing early in his tenure there, look, he's proving Manchester United wrong. Is he? How many goals did he actually score when he played for Aston Villa? I would suggest that he just did the bare minimum, really. He ran around a bit, which I think was one of the phrases that Unai Emery used after his initial impact. Did he look like a 350 grand a week player? I'm not sure he did. And I never saw it that Aston Villa would sign him permanently, because Unai Emery and the people who signed the transfers there, they're too clever. They knew that Marcus Rashford was always going to have an initial burst where he wanted to prove Manchester United wrong and prove that he could still cut it at the top level. But you look at the way it dwindled away, I think by the end we were seeing the Marcus Rashford of old, and that's why clubs are not queuing up to sign him.
Yeah, we'll have to watch this space on that, because you just know the rumours are going to start to suffice. Right, just very quickly, Ange did touch on it. We are currently in a post-season tour, Ryan.
Oh my gosh.
I had the pleasure, I don't know if you guys did, I had the pleasure of watching that game for 90 minutes.
I was watching paint dry. So.
Well, you had a better afternoon than I did. What's your thoughts on this? We've obviously lost 1-0 to Essien All-Stars as well, a team that's just been put together, and the last time they played was in 2014. Just to add another, there's a stat for you.
Oh, wow.
And we've lost 1-0. What do you make of it, the whole post-season tour?
Do you know what? I think post-season tours, I don't really get it, to be honest with you. Pre-season friendlies, I don't think you can read into them too much. However, at a time where we're so memeable, at the time where it's so negative, at a time where Amorim was just out on the pitch saying, the storm, I told you the storm was coming, and now I'm telling you the brighter days are coming. Less than a week later, we lose 1-0 to this team, and we're fielding all of our stars. It just, I don't know, man. It's so hard to wrap my head around right now. It's like checking the menu, ordering soup, checking the menu. There's a hair in it, right? That's basically like our season. And then we're checking the menu again. Is hair part of the ingredients? Like that. That's what we're doing right now. We're just trying to make the best out of the situation. It's terrible. It's terrible. Like, if I really, really rant about how poor we are right now, we could go on for the whole show.
Yeah.
Like,
And we're not going to do that.
I know, but I have to rein myself in.
Yeah.
You know, I let loose at the pub with the mates, but I have to rein myself in because it's dire. It's really, really bad right now. That result is embarrassing. And as I say, in isolation, you can't look into pre-season post-season tours, but in isolation, that's a bit embarrassing.
And just an absolute farce, isn't it?
Yeah, it's bad.
It's
bad,
just
isn't
commercial.
it?
It's literally just to go and get extra revenue, isn't it?
Yeah, and then you've got like Garnacho by the shirt
he looks so
signing.
awkward.
That was awkward.
He definitely doesn't want to be there, by the way.
Yeah.
He's been told he shouldn't be. That's
Yeah.
why.
It's true,
I
yeah.
think-
And that, you can't hate him for that. That's just
I don't.
what's the point in him going?
I don't know if like he has to go, but I feel like if there was a way for him to not go, like I'd have been like
Calf
getting a
satin,
doctor's note or
Yeah.
something and be like, yeah, definitely. It's just rubbish, isn't it? It's just prolonging this pain, and you've had that little Aston Villa moment, but then it's just like, right, no, back to normal. This is awful. You know, they're getting booed off.
It'd have been nice to end the season there, though. That's what it does to the morale. Aston Villa at home, nice 2-0 win. Eriksen gets a penalty. See you later. Some departures. Boom. End it there. Obviously, I get, like you say, it's for the revenue, but it's just that's just completely demoralised us again.
Yeah.
Like, it just makes no sense to
I mean, I don't know. Is the revenue, is it like 10 million or
8 million.
something?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I feel like worldwide there were enough United fans to like contribute maybe like a fiver or something. My maths ain't that good,
Yeah,
but
so we
I
don't
feel
have to
like
watch us again.
I feel like they could have raised the funds in some way. Like Gary Neville said, you know, like putting a dinner on or something like that. They definitely could have raised those funds without them having to
Well, I
play
think
those
Harry
games.
Maguire and Diogo Dalot are off to India as well to do some like separate media obligations, not to play a game, just to go and fulfil media obligations and stuff, which is fantastic for you guys on that side of the world that have never seen us. I just feel sorry that you're not getting a better product. I feel sorry that the first time you may be seeing your heroes in first person, you're not getting.
They still get great welcomes from the fans.
Amazing,
There's absolute
amazing
fanfare
support.
To it.
It just shows how big we really are, but
it's
just the product.
disappointing, yeah.
Crookie, for you, do you agree?
This comes in the season when we've seen FA Cup replay scrap because there's too much pressure on Premier League elite players to play games. I think it's a shambles, to be honest. I paid no attention to the match yesterday, didn't even look at the lineup. I've got no interest. But what they're doing is they're giving rival fans yet another stick to beat this once great club with, because they're losing to, you know, a pub side, effectively one who's not played since 2014, as you've mentioned. They're going around on an open top bus, which is the height of embarrassment. I mean, optically, it just looks dreadful, doesn't it? And again, you know, back to Angie's point about Ineos, it's sort of a fitting end to what's been a dismal season of rank bad decision making.
Absolutely, really bad stuff.
What a way to end it.
What a way, what a way. Something a little bit more positive before we wrap up, because we're going to check in with a Man United fan who has gone viral this season after boldly promising not to cut his hair. Don't know why he's done this. Until we win 5 games on the trot. And who knows when that next haircut is going to be. I'm delighted to welcome to the show Frank, also known as the United Strand. The Barnet is getting massive, Frank. We've all been following your journey. And also, Frank, wondering why on earth you decided to do this. Can you let us know what made you think, you know what, I'm actually going to do this?
It was all to spread some humour to, well, first of all, it was Man United fans. I thought it would be a nice thing to, you know, a funny thing to do, to spread some humour to other Man United fans in a very painful time. But it's actually become that there's obviously a lot of Man United fans following along, but there's also a lot of rival fans never wanting me to cut my hair again.
And how's it been for yourself managing the hair, mate? Because I've seen, you know, when you go on your social media, you literally see what you look like all those months ago. Nice little short back and sides, and it's getting big. Is it manageable? What are you doing with it?
What's a routine?
Yeah.
It's basically just this.
Big
That's it. But no, I did a video the other day actually, because people wanted to see what it was like if I let it dry naturally, and then I've had about thousands of comments telling me to use a curl cream and diffuser and all this kind of stuff. So I'm going to have to look into it a bit more, to be honest. But
Silk
I'm
pillowcase
new to
as
this.
well is good for frizz.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's even more hair advice, which I'm sure you've been getting loads of.
I have to say, it's really funny watching some of your videos, because sometimes the match has already happened. And you say something like, oh, it's Liverpool today. Let's hope that we get a win. And I already know that we lost, And then I'm checking the video like, oh, this poor guy. Did you think it was going to go on as long as it has?
Yeah, were you prepared,
were you prepared for this?
Long?
No, not at all. I genuinely, I know that we were going through a bad situation. So I started in October last year, still under Ten Hag. And I thought...
Oh, Frank.
I thought it would, I thought we were playing badly, but it's not going to go on for that long. I thought maybe a few months, a funny little thing to do, and then it'll all be over and that'll be that. But it's, I can't see when it's going to end now.
Are you counting pre-season?
No.
He's not.
No.
That was going to be my next question, actually, because do you regret that now, Frank? Well, actually, I say do you regret that? We've just started postseason, couldn't even win that. So, do you regret not having different stipulations where you sort of inserted into your own contract? I tell you what, if it gets past 6 months, I'll just call it a day. Like you've got to see it through now.
No, I'm committed until the end. I've got to see it through, like you said.
What a real Man United fan, though. The loyalty and commitment to what you've decided to do, I do rate that.
Crookie, for you, I mean, would you like to make a stance by doing anything like that? Maybe don't cut your beard or something?
Yeah.
Do you know what? At the start of this podcast, I was looking at the camera, thinking, "Crikey, I need a haircut." But not as much as our guest. And I'll tell you what, if it doesn't work out for you, you can always set yourself up as a Marouane Fellaini lookalike. I think there's a few things there.
It's not far off.
Yeah, absolutely. And Frank, listen, on the team though, on a serious note, mate, you are a United fan, and you've done this to kind of shed some positivity and some lightheartedness to try and give us all something to lock into, which actually it has provided, mate, in a really bad season. Although we feel sorry for you going on, you go day 1,000, whatever it is, still no wins. But have you allowed yourself to think when it could happen, when that fifth game, and have you allowed yourself to think, pre-kickoff, game 5, we've done 4 on the bounce. How nervous will you be in that 5th game, whenever it is? And do you think it'll actually come next season? Genuine question.
Well, this is the thing: is that now that there's no European football, I know that it would have been Champions League football if we'd won the Europa League, but actually it means less games, which means less chances to win 5 in a row next season. So it's looking very bleak. But I do think that
we didn't win 2 in a row, did we? All season.
No,
we got back to back.
We did do 2.
Well, it's in all competitions. So,
okay. So when we start the EFL Cup run, then we got a chance.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that we just need a few early rounds in the Carabao Cup and FA Cup, and maybe a relegation team. Well, we're probably a relegation team, but
Oh goodness. Well, listen,
maybe
mate,
next season. Hopefully next season.
We wish. Obviously, we all hope we win 5 in a row because we'll all be rejoicing. But for you, on a personal, mate, thank you so much for choosing to do it, to keep us all updated. We're all behind you.
Well done, man.
We want you to
Thank
just
you
be
very
bald
much.
as quickly as possible, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
Thank you for joining us. That's it for another episode of Inside Devils. Thank you for joining us, and a big thanks to Crookie and Ryan, of course, and Frank with his big barnet. We'll see you very soon on the next episode of Inside Devils.